Good evening and welcome to Dispel the Myths. Get the facts, dispel the myths. A live discussion on the COVID-19 pandemic. Tonight, we have a well thought out discussion for you that will cover many facets concerning the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll start off first with a discussion organized by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, where we'll have some professionals to provide the latest information on the COVID-19, the disease, the variants, the COVID-19 vaccination, and how the rest of the world is battling the pandemic and the latest COVID regulations in Belize. The discussion is meant to be interactive, which means that you can submit your questions on the News 5 Facebook live stream at News 5 Live. You can also post your questions using the hashtag #GetTheFacts. We'll also hear from COVID survivors and those who have lost loved ones to the disease, and how are the churches and communities responding in the face of this pandemic. We have a lot to cover for you tonight, so we're about to get started. But I'd like to remind you that this entire discussion is organized by the Ministry of Health and Wellness in collaboration with Channel 5. We have a lot to cover, as I said before, so let's get started.
Last month, my father passed away due to COVID-19. My father was not vaccinated. He was not. To be truthful, the things he would have said would be the things that we're hearing around town. But there were also some of the other things, some of the other myths that really I was trying to tell him, no, Daddy, you need to get your vaccine, but I couldn't convince him in time.
I think what they're doing is a disservice to this country. In my mind, what they're doing is creating fear among people when they should be spreading a message of hope. What I hear them say has no basis, no scientific basis for the assertions they're making. And more than anything else, there's no legal basis for their assertion.
Would he have gotten that vaccine, he would still be here cracking his jokes and being his fun, crazy self, and we really miss him.
As Belize continues to shield its people from the worst ravages of this pandemic, we must continue to keep our country safe by ensuring reliable supply chains for critical components for the fight ahead. Belize's oxygen supply is safe with 300% more oxygen supply in country than is necessary. However, Fabregas continues to make our oxygen supply chain even more robust and responsive to a potential worst-case scenario. Through supply arrangements established and secured by Fabregas, our country can receive critical life-saving oxygen from 5 regional neighbors in Mexico and Central America through marine and/or land transportation. So, in addition, Fabregas has secured additional reliable sources of life-saving oxygen using a diversity of transportation modes and countries of origin. Fabregas Belize Limited. We got your back.
welcome back to Get the Facts, Dispel the Myths, a live discussion on the COVID-19 pandemic. We're getting ready to move into our first discussion, which will focus squarely on the facts about COVID-19 and the vaccination program. Joining me, I have a panel of doctors, and we have Dr. Anastasio Cobb. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
Dr. Mark Musa.
Evening.
And Dr. Jorge Hidalgo.
Thank
Good
you.
evening, gentlemen, and welcome. Let's start off with Dr. Cobb. Dr. Cobb, just briefly, let's talk a little bit about your area of specialities.
Yeah, I'm an otolaryngologist in layman's terms, an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. So I've been practicing my profession since 1992 till now. And well, briefly about me, it's my area deals with the direct contact of people who can't transmit the virus because it's transmitted through the eyes, the nose, and the throat. And this is my particular area.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cobb, for joining us. Dr. Musa, let's talk about your area and how it relates to the pandemic itself.
So I'm a specialist in internal medicine and gastroenterology. So I am an adult general physician. I deal with adult medical health, and this pandemic has impacted the elderly and adult medicine.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Musa, for joining us. And Dr. Hidalgo, let's talk about your area as well.
Well, thank you for the invitation. And I'm as well as Dr. Musa, I'm an internal medicine specialist, and that also we deal with the adult care, but also I'm an intensive care specialist, and I've been practice intensive care since 2002. Actually, all my career, I'm lucky to be basically developing in Belize. I'm happy to be in Belize now.
Now, we know that you're also the Secretary General of the World Federation of Intensive Care Medicine, and you're also the editor of the COVID-19 Lessons from the Front Line. So let's talk a little bit just about your involvement in the World Federation. And of course, we want to focus squarely on what you're doing with COVID-19 and the lessons learned.
Yes, well, the World Federation is essentially a federation of societies of intensive care around the world. And we, as a Belize, as a country, we joined the federation 10 years ago. And slowly we are essentially became more involved in the work of the World Federation, also trying to develop strategies and also share education with the low-income countries. And just 2 years ago, I became the Secretary General for the World Federation of Intensive Care in Australia.
Well, congratulations. And let's talk about the lessons of COVID-19. And I'd like to extend this question to all the doctors on the panel. A year ago, in terms of what we know about COVID, how do we compare in terms of knowledge and the body of knowledge that is accepted in the medical fraternity?
Well, let me start. A year ago, we can say at the end of 2019, at the beginning of 2020, essentially, all of us around the world got the information about this new virus. No? By March and April 2020, the virus essentially have the world in the knees. No? We all of us have basically trying to understand how this new virus behave. We've seen countries with a very established and very strong health systems essentially being overwhelmed for a new virus, a new condition, and all of us trying to understand what is going on at that point, and all of us will say, okay, hopefully we have a medicine, a vaccine at that point, that it can control that, because it became so sudden, and of course all the world was in a lockdown, and trying to understand what is happening as a medical community, but also as a society.
Now when we talk, and I'll extend to the other two doctors as well, I remember clearly hearing about the novel COVID-19, virus and all of that. In terms of terminologies, and as doctors, for us it meant just basically, new kind of, but what did it mean for you as a doctor, and how has that evolved from then to now?
Well, I think it's new for us as well, and the new means that we have never been exposed to this virus. So our body doesn't have any innate immunity to it. So we're almost starting from scratch. It's not like the flu virus or the common cold virus, where every year we are exposed to the virus and we do have some level of immunity, and the virus might be changing. So over the last year, our knowledge of the virus is changing, but we have to realize that the virus itself is changing, and we have to adapt to the virus in our response and our treatment to the virus. So now there has been hundreds of variants of this virus. We hear about variants. It means that when the virus is spreading, it is trying to evade our immune system as well. So its sole job is to try and survive. And so if we just leave it up to our own immunity to try and achieve herd immunity by just infection, if we have a case fatality rate of, say, 2%, that's the current population in the world is 7.8 billion people. If you decide, I don't want any vaccine, I want to achieve herd immunity through infection, 2% case fatality of 7.8 billion is 150 million people dying. In the Spanish flu, in 1918, the world population then was 1.5 billion. It's thought that about 50 million people died in the Spanish flu. Currently, we have the death toll so far has been about 4.1 million lives lost worldwide. So the vaccine offers us to get immunity in a controlled way. It's not allowing the virus to, when it presented first in Italy and when it presented in New York, where it devastated sophisticated health systems, overwhelmed them within weeks. We in Belize have to be very protective of our health system. We don't have a robust health system like those first world countries that have been devastated. The vaccine offers us a unique opportunity, and I think we're doing well, but we need access to more vaccines. We need to show people that by giving the vaccine in a controlled way, we're achieving an immunity. The vaccines today are very effective at preventing serious infection, complications, and death. That's the most important thing. It's not, it's important that people are saying, well, I can still catch COVID if I get vaccinated. But your chances of survival is extremely high. In high vaccination countries, it's now being called the pandemic of the unvaccinated. We are not there yet because 89% of our population is still not vaccinated. So we have to protect that 89% and access more vaccines and allow us to achieve a safe level of before we start easing restrictions and trying to get back into some level of normalcy.
You said quite a bit, so let's unpack some of it, because first we started talking about variants, and anyone can jump in. What's the importance of not only recognizing, when you talk in the general population, I know you hear tests are being sent outside of Belize to identify what variants exist within the country. Why is that such an important thing?
Well, one of the key things, as Dr. Musa said, the longer the virus is spreading among ourselves, the more opportunity it has of mutating. Mutating means it changes its genetic form. It changes its proteins on the spikes that it has, which are the proteins that cause the disease to become present in a person. So the longer we take to roll out our vaccination process, vaccines is good. It's especially good because that is a solution to the problem. But vaccination will be the solution, because you can have the vaccine in a country and you can have vaccines taking it to the people. But if the person is refusing the vaccines or the vaccination process, then the longer we take to achieve a bigger population, the more possibilities of variants. And these variants, some of them are not as bad, but some of them are very infectious and transmit very fast, which means that when we were detecting the first COVID in our country, we were able to trace it very easily. Now, with one person, if a person catches it in an office, for example, and then you go and test these people, nearly 90% to 100% of these people will be infected. And so the variants are very important for us to know how we are going to manage our population. If we discover a variant in certain parts of our country, we have to be targeting that zone particularly, because from that zone it can get out of hand. And to repeat, our system is a weak system, our health system. We basically have around 20 to 30 ventilators in Carl Hughes, 6 ventilators in healthcare partners, some ventilators in medical associates. If we get a massive infectivity rate in Belize, not only don't we have the resources, but the human resources as well. We only have 3 intensivists in this country. We have Dr. Cuellar, we have Dr. Hidalgo, and we have Dr. Arriaga. So 3 intensivists for our whole country. So let us sink it into the hearts of our people that if we are going to survive this pandemic, we need to start to believe in science and dispel those beliefs that these vaccines are harmful. We can go into how to explain the vaccines so that people can understand how these vaccines were developed through rigorous procedures. First, a small group of people, then thousands of people, and more thousands of people all over the world being tested at the same time.
What makes like a small country like Belize? Initially, our response was to lock down, right? And you look at larger countries where you're seeing a 3rd and a 4th wave and everything just going into total chaos. When you look at a small country like Belize, initially the response is, well, we're small. If everybody, like you were talking about herd immunity through actually infections, why is that not a solution for us?
Well, I think we learn as well. If I may comment on our response so far as a country, I think if you look at it, when we locked down in March, we had maybe 18 infections, 2 deaths. You could argue we locked down early, but again, this was a new virus to us, and we were seeing what was happening around us. But you can also argue that we have seen the response around the world, and we can learn from other persons or other countries' experience. So when Belize opened back up in July 1st, I think, we started to open up, and we went through different phases of less curfew and less restrictions and things like that. There was a significant increase in the positivity rate starting in September. By October 1st, there was maybe a consistently over 20% daily positivity rate. And that continued all the way through to November, increased to 30-40% in December. And you could argue then would have been the time to increase and act early, because when we were having hundreds of cases, or active cases were sometimes close to 1,000, 2,000, things like that. But October 1st, the death rate in Belize was 41 persons had died. By the end of January, it had grown 260 more people had died. So 301 persons were dead by February the 1st. And it was because of an intense lockdown during the Christmas period. And I think the country did well to get a quick control of the infection so far. And I think we have been slowly lifted. So on February 1st, 301 persons have died. The death rate today is 333. So in the last 6 months, only 32 other Belizeans have died. So we are learning. We are learning how to treat better. We are learning how to identify earlier. And we as a country have done well in the last 6 months.
But what about COVID fatigue?
That's a reality. But we always have to find. For example, there are some worrying numbers the last 2 months. Mm-hmm. In June and July, we can just see from practice that the virus was changing. And the PCR identified that there was they call it VOC, variant of concern. But you could even tell even by doing contact tracing, if you went into a home in the past with the original or wild variant, if maybe in a household of 6 people, maybe 1 or 2 other people were getting infected. Starting in May and June, you can see a worrying trend that more people, that one person being infected was infected more people. So that household, 5 out of the 6 people were becoming infected. When you're going into businesses, you can see instead of 2 other persons becoming infected, 5, 6. So it is felt. So we now know, we have identified that we have a variant of concern, but the virus is behaving that way. So we have to respect the virus. The Delta variant has now been described as the fittest, fastest, most formidable form of the variant, of the virus. But the vaccine offers an important opportunity. The vaccine against the Delta variant. So we have been using AstraZeneca. 1 dose of the AstraZeneca prevents 71% of hospitalizations. 2 doses prevents 92% of hospitalizations. It prevents even more deaths, a much higher percent, because not everybody hospitalized will die. If we identify them early and treat them effectively, we can save a lot of that 8%. But we have been noticing that more people who are vaccinated are getting infected with milder forms of the infection, of the disease. So the AstraZeneca, with 1 dose, can prevent symptomatic infections only 30%. So we've seen a significant drop in its ability to prevent mild infections. That is important because it tells you that you have to separate the virus's ability to infect somebody and your ability and the level of protection. So currently, the virus is still very effective at saving your life. Saving your life, preventing hospitalization.
The vaccine.
The vaccine. The vaccine is very effective at that currently. And there is something called a variant of highest consequence. When there might be a possibility where the vaccine doesn't work on the virus. So we have to use this currently, the vaccine can save your life. It can prevent severe disease, but you cannot think the vaccine is the only solution. You cannot put pressure on the vaccine and say, I want to take off my mask. I want to stop social distancing. Because the transmission, the vaccine is not a barrier. The mask is a barrier. If the virus is living in my nose, this mask will prevent me from giving you. So obviously, if a vaccinated person, we know is shedding less virus, so the likelihood is still less, but it's not 100%. So the vaccine is still very effective at saving your life, but we cannot say, oh, well, I took the vaccine and I still got infected. The vaccine saved your life.
Yeah. Now, we're about to wrap this segment, but I want to ask Dr. Hidalgo, since you have done the lessons from the front line, what would you say is the most salient lesson that you've learned during your cataloging of the lessons during this entire pandemic?
Well, we prepared a book, the COVID-19 lessons from the front line. The book is we're trying to capture several aspects that we went through. One is the origin of the virus, how the virus came across, all the different theories about the virus itself. We also put some of the stories of people that went through COVID and what the lockdown, how the lockdown affects the advantages or disadvantages of that, as well as also the impact of the COVID-19 on the oil industry. For example, we want to say, okay, what happened with the oil industry and how this were affected for the COVID-19. Also, we put in the book what are the strategies that each health systems need to utilize in case of a surge. That's something that we were discussing with Mark and Dr. Kobe at the beginning, that what in case if we have a surge of cases, how we are going to respond to that. But the other aspect, the millennials, how the millennials and the younger generation, how the COVID-19 affect their lives. The going to a school, also we essentially see how we adapt quickly to and respond to the COVID-19, trying to use online, the technology that came now to stay. Just of course we need to trying to see how we utilize better the technology in our favor. I mean that all these different aspects we're trying to compile in the book and to present it to the population. The book also is essentially there are authors from Belize, Dr. Larga Espada, Nurs Lorna, Dr. Godinez, Mr. Mike Singh also, that he wrote the politics in COVID-19. I mean that trying to cover all the aspects.
Now, before we go to the break, I'd like to remind our viewers that this is meant to be interactive and that you can submit your questions on News 5 Facebook live stream at News 5 Live. And remember to post your questions using the hashtag #GetTheFacts. We're going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll come back. In our next segment, we'll get an opportunity to talk about the human impact of COVID-19. Don't go anywhere. Get the facts, dispel the myths. A live discussion continues after these messages.
We must vaccinate ourselves. It is a serious virus. Before you relax, get fat. Can't wait for the stage show again. Can't wait for the dance again. Can't wait for back to normal again.
Today we are visiting the Orange Walk district. It is part of the national vaccination campaign.
I think the turnout countrywide has been very well acceptable. I was diagnosed with COVID in November, so I did wait for my time. I got my first dose and I'm looking forward into getting my second dose this week. Please protect yourself, protect your families, protect those around you. The vaccine is safe.
As we have been saying from the very beginning, the greatest weapons we have in the fight against COVID are the public health measures, the wearing of the mask, the social distancing, the washing of your hands, and now the vaccine. I've gotten both.
Think of yourself and think of your loved ones, of the family you go back to at the end of the day. Think of your friends, think of your neighbors and your other relatives. If you have not vaccinated, come out and vaccinate. These mobile clinics are going around the country. This is the opportunity. Don't wait until it's too late.
I want to encourage more of our citizens across the district to come out, get vaccinated. The more people get vaccinated, the better we are as a country. Protect your loved ones, protect your children, protect your elderly.
We want to reopen our country fully. The only way to do that is if all of us are vaccinated. The vaccine promises that you will not have severe symptoms if you're to be infected. It promises that it will keep you out of the hospital, and it also promises that you're not going to die from COVID. So these are all the reasons why you should come out, love yourself, love your family, love your country. Come out and get vaccinated.
If you want to relax, get vaxxed.
We must vaccinate ourselves. It is a serious virus. Before you relax, get fat. Can't wait for the stage show again. Can't wait for the dance again. Can't wait for back to normal again.
Trimming the hedges and overgrown trees. Packing food supplies. Ensuring that you have medical supplies and important documents are all part of your hurricane preparations. But what about your home insurance? An insurance policy with RFNG Insurance gives you the confidence that your home and possessions are protected when a natural disaster strikes. Include RFNG in your hurricane plans and join the thousands of Belizeans who have learned why it pays to get it right. RFNG Insurance is a Roku company.
As Belize continues to shield its people from the worst ravages of this pandemic, we must continue to keep our country safe by ensuring reliable supply chains for critical components for the fight ahead. Belize's oxygen supply is safe with 300% more oxygen supply in country than is necessary. However, Fabregas continues to make our oxygen supply chain even more robust and responsive to a potential worst-case scenario. Through supply arrangements established and secured by Fabregas, our country can receive critical life-saving oxygen from 5 regional neighbors in Mexico and Central America through marine and/or land transportation. So, in addition, Fabregas has secured additional reliable sources of life-saving oxygen using a diversity of transportation modes and countries of origin. Fabregas Belize Limited. We got your back.
We all find ourselves reminiscing on life before COVID-19, roaming freely, embracing without concern, laughing and enjoying the splendors of life. My, how we miss those times. It's time to get vaccinated so we can all start doing the things we love with the people we love in the safest possible manner once again. Digi, Mayona Resorts, and the Ministry of Health encourages all Belizeans to get your first and second vaccine for chances to win tons of awesome prizes now through September 30th. Win free LTE data packages every week, cash prizes, and a free 1-year mobile postpaid plan each month courtesy of Digi. Plus a weekend family getaway at a Mayona Gold Standard Resort each month courtesy Mayona Resorts. Winners will be posted on Digi Facebook and Instagram and Ministry of Health's Facebook every Friday starting June 25th. Visit a vaccination center nearest you today. Get vaccinated and win. Visit livedigi.com for more details.
And welcome back to Get the Facts, Dispel the Myths, a live discussion on the COVID-19 pandemic. In this segment, we're going to be talking about the human impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the lives lost, and the long-haul symptoms. And joining us for this conversation, we have first Dr. Gabriela Guerra, who's a recovered COVID-19 patient. She lost her husband, Kevin, and her brother-in-law, Kenneth. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
We have also joining us Dr. Damaris Cruz, and she's going to be talking about how does COVID-19 affect the body. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having us.
And we have also parliamentarian Ingrid Vega, who's a recovered COVID-19 patient, and as you all may know, she also lost her husband, David Dido Vega, and she was also on mechanical ventilation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Now, we want to start off with the personal stories. And I'd like to start first. I'll just call you by your first names if that's okay. Ingrid, let's talk a little bit about, one, the loss that you suffered, and also your journey in terms of battling the disease itself.
Well, first of all, good night. It has been a rough journey. I'm not only a survivor, but I was also intubated. And I lost my dear husband at the same time. So he was not only my husband, but he was the father of my kids. He was my high school sweetheart. He was my best friend. He was my politician, you know. So I was not one of those lucky ones, you know, that after 14 days I was back on my feet. And I was one of those that after 14 days I was still fighting for my life. And after intubation, recovery was still not easy. It's still not easy. I am still recovering. I still have fatigueness. I can't sleep at night. I have to battle with COVID every day. It's a reminder that it's real and it's out there. And the loss of my husband is a reminder every day. Having to deal with the grief now, because I refused grieving before, because I know that grieving would have delayed my recovery. And I am sure that what got me intubated was the news and the shock that he was gone. So it's not easy. I'm fighting. And just on Saturday, my 8-year-old asked me, well, I told her that I was going to be in a show, and she's like, Mom, you know, again? I'm like, yeah, you know, and she's like, so what is it on this time? And I told her, you know, it's about the vaccine. And she said, Mom, can you say something for me? And I'm like, sure. Can you tell people that it's not easy to lose someone?
Take your time.
And that if my daddy had the vaccine, he would still be here with me.
What's her name?
She's Kelsey.
She's very smart.
Yeah, you know, I have two beautiful, smart girls, and I have to fight for them every day. And so, yeah, and the hardest part is that on December 5th, which was his birthday, that was when he had to be taken to Belize Medical Hospital. And that was the last time that we heard him, and that was the last time that we told him how much we loved him. Because on that same day, he had to be intubated as well. And he fought for his life. But then here I came along, and then I started fighting for my life, and I couldn't say goodbye. I told him bye, and I couldn't even hug him because I felt that if I held him and hugged him and told him goodbye, I would have wanted to break all those machines that were in that room. And those were the machines that actually saved my life. So I told him that I can't grieve him, that I have to get back to my girls. And that was it. You know, I remember the next, I think 5 days later, I remember they calling out my name, trying to wake me up. And after that, it was just recovery time. So I want to tell Belize that it's not easy. It's rough. It's painful. It aches. And the vaccine will save lives. You know, it won't get you to where I got. It will not make you lose a loved ones. Do you want to be where I am today? I don't think so. You know, you don't want to go through that. So before it's too late, and before you lose someone, and before you go to the hospital, be wise. Let's take that vaccine. You know, and let's think about our healthcare workers too. I mean, I am sure that they are drained. They need a break, you know.
And that's thank you very much for sharing your story. And I know with each retelling, it doesn't get any easier. Mm-hmm. So we really appreciate you and the courage to share with us once again. Thank you. And you're talking about, you know, healthcare workers. And of course, when we heard about the loss of the twin brothers, you know, that was one of those moments where I think Belize really stood up and took notice, you know. And we have Gabriela. Let's talk a little bit about your story, and also the fact that you're also, how far did your journey in your own personal battle with COVID-19 take you?
The first thing is, I think the whole country know the tragedy touched my family, double. We lost, the country lost, okay? Not only the family. And the first time I'm talking about this thing with the whole country, true. I prefer remember my husband and my brother-in-law when they was alive, and a lot of jokes and or experience together when we studied in Cuba, true. But this is the reality. We lose the doctors, we lose our twins, and sometimes it's unfair when I treat with some people that they say the vaccine is not important, the COVID-19 not exists, and I just want to tell you that COVID is real. That COVID take your loved one, okay, and leave you alone in a new country that not yours, like my case. Thank you very much. I'm from Ecuador. My family is there, still being there. My father, my mother, my sister. But I have a new family here. My in-laws, my son. So Belize is my new country. And I'm trying to work hard every day to my new country. and help to all my country be protected with the vaccine. Actually, I'm the doctor in charge of the Dr. Kevin and Kenneth Polyclinic in Benqueviejo. And you can imagine the emotion for me when they assigned to me to attend the vaccine mobiles. I want to pinch everyone. I want to pinch everyone is there. And I asked, you get the vaccine? Not yet, not yet. Why not yet? And I try to clarify all the questions or the myths or the wrong information is out there. Okay? About my journey, the words not exist. And I just want to tell you, every night, I tell my son, I love you. So how I can prove I love my son? Be protected to him. Taking the opportunity, Mr. Vega, my brother-in-law, my husband, and more Belizeans don't have before, okay? So why you say not to an opportunity than another countries? For example, my parents, they need a appear in a list and they give you the appointment. If you lose your appointment, you need to go back to put in the list and then you get your vaccine. So here we are begging to the people to get the vaccine, okay? So that's unfair, okay? Because I know if they had this opportunity, they will take it, okay? So they will say, it's okay, the vaccine. So I proved to my son that my words, okay? So I get my full vaccinate last week because I had COVID also. So the 6 months after is when the time when you could get the vaccine and this thing. So you can imagine, I was waiting for my date, like it's a special day, okay? The day for proof my compromise with the country, my compromise like a doctor, my compromise with my community, okay? With me, with my husband, with my son.
Thank you very much for sharing as well, Gabriela. Now, I just want to go to Damaris and let's talk a little bit about, we saw in Ingrid's case, the intubation. How far, you weren't, you had severe symptoms, Gabriela?
Thanks God, no.
Okay.
No, I don't know why, because I'm asthmatic. I have a lot of lung conditions, allergic, but my husband was so healthy. I drink Coke. I know I'm not a sport person. Don't like me. My husband every day told me like, let's go run to the beach and do something. And I was like, no. He never smoked. He never drink. He was a healthy person. So that's the main. Because sometimes we treat with persons say, I'm healthy. I'm okay. I know drink. I know, or I do it, but I'm good. I'm okay. But it's the ignorance talking for them, okay? And they put a lot of excuse, the religion, excuse, okay? Just excuse. When you try to find the reason, you was like, okay, I blow my head because I don't understand the point. I don't understand the point. It's difficult to explain the frustration you feel when someone told you that things in your face, when you had the COVID, when you lose your loved one, okay, when you are treating with the persons, okay, and you need to refer persons with symptoms or you admit persons in flu clinic, okay, because they come with positive cases, okay, complications, and to be realist, the country not prepared for the massive, okay, patients with COVID, okay? So we are trying or lucky, and let me tell you something, probably you lose, okay?
Yeah. Now, Damaris, thank you very much, Gabriela. Damaris, let's talk a little bit about the effect of COVID-19 on the body.
Right. Okay, so initially we thought, when the disease first appeared, we thought that it was primarily a respiratory disease. And as time has lapsed and we've had an opportunity to treat so many patients, we have gradually learned that more than just being a respiratory disease, it's a multi-system disease. It affects all the systems in the body. It affects the brain, it affects the heart, it affects the liver, the pancreas, even the prostate in men. And so we've learned that having COVID doesn't necessarily mean you will only have a pneumonia, that there are other complications that can come along with it, that are not limited to the respiratory system, and that unfortunately in many cases can persist beyond that recuperation date, those 14 days. Some people live with what we'd call long-term sequelae, where they persist with it for months. And so it's something to really consider. It's not just a pneumonia. And it's more important too to note that it's a disease that is transferred from person to person, which means that each of us can potentially be carriers. But the good news is that there are measures that we can take to prevent the spreading of that illness. And that is why through the Ministry of Health, we are not ceasing to recommend and to insist that everybody wears their mask and that we wear them properly. The correct way of wearing our mask is above our noses, not below it. And that we continue practicing hand hygiene, washing our hands as much as possible, using hand sanitizer, that we maintain social distance, physical distance as much as possible, to avoid social gatherings, unnecessary social gatherings, and to go out primarily when it's necessary for work or for any things that are really necessary in the home. So it's something that we can, even though the disease is out there, each and every one of us can do our part to limit the transfer of the disease, because in actuality we are spreading it from person to person. And so it's important that we all take our measures to take care.
One of the things, as Ingrid was talking about her challenges with the fatigue and long haul impacts, people, you know, even with the number of deaths that we've had as a country, unless you've been impacted by it, it's just a number. You know, when you hear about people being affected with the long haul effects, again, it's something like you say, oh, you know, you find excuses. What do you have to say to people with regards to the long haul effects and how serious those considerations are?
Right. So, like I said and previously described, the illness has physiological damages. It means they affect your body in all the systems. But there's a very important component that oftentimes we don't consider, the psychosocial impact that it has on an individual, on a household, a family, a community, and the country as a whole. Whenever a productive member of a family becomes ill, and unfortunately in some cases they're lost, it means a great affection to the family, to the household, because many times those are the breadwinners. And in cases where we're discussing here, we've seen productive members of the society. We've lost doctors, we've lost important politicians and people that actually were contributing to our society. And it's a disease that does not discriminate. I often hear people say, oh, my immune system is strong, I don't need it. But I often tell people too, when we decide to take the vaccine, or when we encourage you to take the vaccine, it's not only for yourself, because any of us can be carriers today. Even when we've had the vaccine, we can come in contact with the virus, and perhaps our own immune system is strong, and if we do catch COVID-19 disease, we don't have the gravid flow of the symptoms that come with it. But if we transfer it to those in our household, our elderly primarily, our parents, and believes we have such a large population that has comorbidities like diabetes and hypertension. And so these are patients that are most vulnerable to the complications of COVID, because they already have underlying conditions that would make a COVID infection even, the symptoms of it even more intense and potentially deadly. So it's important that we all play our role as individuals in society and stop exempting, just thinking about myself. Yeah. I don't want it, I'm strong, I don't need it. But what of those loved ones that you have at home? So when we start thinking about that, we understand that we have a collective responsibility and individual responsibility in our homes, in our families, in our community, to do our part, because we have the vaccine. Like what was mentioned previously, there are many countries in the world that don't have access to the vaccine. They're very impoverished countries. The poor nations, it's like 1.1% of the poor nations that have access to the vaccine. And so in Belize, we are very fortunate that we have access to the vaccine. Every day we have, the last statistics show that over 3 billion doses have been administered, and every day over 30 million doses are administered. And in Belize, we are fortunate and blessed enough that we have access to the vaccine for all the population free of cost. There are nations where they are charging for the vaccine because it undoubtedly brings a cost on the economy, no? And so the fact that we are able to access it freely, and it potentially has such great benefit for us and our families and our nation as a whole, I think it's an opportunity that if you think about it in the broader aspect, it's something that you really have to grab onto.
Thank you very much. And I'm getting the signal that I have to go to break.
Okay.
But I really want to thank you all for sharing your very personal stories, and definitely encouraging people to go out and get vaccinated.
You help them, save lives, protect them.
Yeah.
Right.
Of that. Now, what we're going to do right now is, we know that one new death was reported today. So we have 333 persons who have died from COVID in Belize. We're going to leave you now. I just want to say thank you again, and for your very powerful testimonials on the way that it has impacted your lives and the ones that you loved, that you have lost.
Whenever I get a chance to share my story, I try my best to do that.
Thank you very much, Ingrid. Gabriela.
Thank you, too.
All right.
Thank you.
We're going to have this break on a video that will take us to the break on why Belizeans are getting vaxxed.
Why you came out today to get vaccinated?
But I just want to say that I come out because I know I'm get sick, and I come out until right now because I'm used to a job, but I have to take my time to come out and to make I get safe, not only me and to my family too, right?
I came out to take my vaccine because I'm a frontline worker and I communicate with a lot of people. I decided to come and get vaccinated today. But I encourage people to come and take it because it's good.
Frightened at first, but glad I get over it. I'm kind of afraid, but I work at the terminal with people, interact with a lot of people, so you better go get tested before it's too late.
This time your first shot, right?
Yeah, this is my first time. I'm kind of nervous, but I pulled through good.
Okay, this is my second vaccination, and I agree that teachers need to be fully vaccinated, not only for us, for our colleagues, for our administration, also for the children. And I believe that if a teacher is fully vaccinated, the parents will feel more comfortable sending their children to the class. Also, when it comes to taking the PCR every 2 weeks, I believe that getting the 2 vaccines is much cheaper. And also, if you have to take the PCR every 2 weeks, you need to take time off from your work. And so I think it's better you get yourself fully vaccinated.
Well, my family and I decided to get vaccine a while ago. Everyone did their research. We had a family discussion about it, and I think it's very important, especially if you're interacting with people. It is each person's conscious decision that, they have to do their own research. And so I don't feel pressured by anyone to get vaccinated, but I feel it is important, especially with the daily interactions. For me, being at a school with a population of 750 students, it is important for me to be safe, and also for the students who are under 18 that I'm safe working with them.
Yes, I see everybody to get vaccinated, and I want to get right because I want to be safe, want to protect my family. The first time, right? I don't work. I am a vendor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you come in contact with people a lot?
Yeah, I contact with people a lot, yes.
What would you say to anybody that's kind of hesitant or scared of getting the vaccine?
Well, I'm not scared, man. and I'm not scared.
And what about other people that are scared? What would you tell them?
Not to be scared. It's good for them to take the vaccine. It's good. It's good.
I was afraid to walk outside, no? To go by, because the way I heard how COVID treats you and people dying, it scares. So every time I go home, I said, I wonder if I catch it. But now that I'm getting the injection, I feel confident that I can go now.
It gives you that consciousness, that safetyness. You feel more confident, you feel better. And if you feel better, it's the less stress you have on you. So all in all, I think it sets you up better for moving around.
No make no sense at all. No kind of sense. That Belize video when I have that stand up there in China for.
That not in your China at all, that in Spanish.
You understand what it said then?
Yeah. It said wear your face mask properly, cover your nose and your mouth.
Will help prevent the spread of COVID to others. Together we could make Belize safe.
Wear your mask properly over your mouth and nose to protect yourself and others. Together we can keep Belize COVID-19 safe.
Welcome to Garden City Medical Center, where our goal is to provide excellent services in healthcare. We offer services in over 15 specialties and laparoscopic surgeries that are minimally invasive with a short recovery time. Our great diagnostic equipment allows us to extend our services on a fully functioning lab plus ultrasound. For more information, you can contact us at 822-3022 or via email. We are open 24/7.
Bundle the fastest, most reliable, unlimited broadband in Belize with your prepaid or postpaid mobile plan or Netflix. You can bundle your broadband with your prepaid and enjoy 50% off all national calls, plus get SMS and data. Paid plans? Then bundle with any speed and pay only $25 extra monthly to enjoy unlimited smart-to-smart calls, plus 500 minutes, plus 6,300 megabytes of data. Stream unlimited HD movies and TV shows with our broadband, plus the Netflix add-on for only $30 monthly, and enjoy streaming on your laptop, TV, phone, or tablet. Visit a smart showroom near you to sign up or upgrade to the bundle that's right for you. Smart, bringing people together.
As Belize continues to shield its people from the worst ravages of this pandemic, we must continue to keep our country safe by ensuring reliable supply chains for critical components for the fight ahead. Belize's oxygen supply is safe with 300% more oxygen supply in country than is necessary. However, Fabregas continues to make our oxygen supply chain even more robust and responsive to a potential worst-case scenario. Through supply arrangements established and secured by Fabregas, our country can receive critical life-saving oxygen from 5 regional neighbors in Mexico and Central America through marine and/or land transportation. So, in addition, Fabregas has secured additional reliable sources of life-saving oxygen using a diversity of transportation modes and countries of origin. Fabregas Belize Limited. We got your back.
Welcome back to Get the Facts Dispel. Dispel the Myths, a live discussion on the COVID-19 pandemic. In this segment, we're going to be talking about the church and the community response. Joining us, we have Father Brian Christopher from St. Martin de Porres Parish, and we have Michelle Reyes, District Health Educator for HECOPAB and the Chair of the COVID Response. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, let's start first with the church's involvement. We've had varying responses from churches. Where does your church stand and your faith in terms of the response to COVID-19?
You know, I would say the Christian faith is based on what we call the Great Commandment, love of God and love of our neighbor. And the key to understanding what that means is that those are inseparable. That if you love God, you've got to love your neighbor. You've got to take care of those, especially who are most vulnerable. And in this case, that means taking care of those who are at greatest risk of contracting this virus. So taking care of those with pre-existing conditions, taking care of the elderly, taking care of everybody who could get this virus. And so I'm going to do whatever I can, and I'm going to preach whatever I need to preach to encourage people to get this vaccine. This is not I understand that people say, well, you know, we got to see both sides of this and we got to pray about this. Well, hey, that's fine. And I get that people have questions about this. But let's take those questions seriously, and let's get real answers to those questions. I think some people say that they have questions, and they'll hide behind that, you know, as if to say, well, I have questions, I'm not going to get vaccinated. Well, no, if you have questions, if you have honest questions, good. Go ask any of these panelists who are here today and see if you can get some answers. Use that intellect that God gave you. So we really do encourage people, yes, if you have questions, ask them. But let's look for answers to those questions, because there's a lot at stake here. Right? It's not just my health, as Dr. Cruz said earlier, but it's my ability to love my sisters and brothers, to help them stay healthy. It's about my own integrity as a Catholic, as a Christian. It's about the integrity of our churches as well.
How willing are you to have that kind of a discussion with your parishioners? Do you wait for them to bring it up? Or what approaches do you use to engage?
We talk about it right there in Mass. We talk about it right there in the homilies. We'll talk about it in the announcements. In fact, as a church, in the hopes that this would kind of spur a little bit more willingness to get the vaccine, we just, with the ministry, we partnered with the Ministry of Health to do a vaccine lottery at St. Martin's. So anybody getting a vaccine, it started 2 weeks ago. Anybody getting a vaccine is registered to win $500 in prizes. I'm not sure that that's going to work, but whatever we need to do, again, and to have this discussion, and people do have sincere questions. You know, people have sincere, honest, and good questions. But like I said, let's talk about this, and don't just come to your local priest or your minister to ask questions about public health. Go to the public health experts. All right, that's not my training; it's their training. So let's get the answers from them.
Now, let's switch a little bit and talk to Michelle about the community response as an educator through HECOPAB. You're also district coordinator for Stan Creek.
The response team.
The response team. Now, let's talk a little bit about how do you engage the community? And we know that we've had some hotspots in Stan Creek. How do you engage them?
All right, thank you for having me, first of all. Good night, everyone. So HECOPAB is a department that works with the community. So even prior to COVID, we have built relationships with the community. We have volunteers who are called community health workers. We supervise them, we teach them, we prepare them to work in the community in circumstances like this, outbreaks. So they are persons from the community. They are persons who are well known in the community, respected and role models in the community. And the message goes through them. All right. So we have built relationships with the village councils, with the leaders from the churches, different key leaders and organizations within the communities. So those are the key persons we actually work with, and those are the persons who knows the language, especially the language. Those are barriers for us sometimes to get to persons, but the community health workers are persons who, you know, can better share information for us.
Now, you're talking about voluntary workers. They come from the communities in which they serve?
Yes.
And how does that make your work easier?
Well, they know their community. They know their community behaviors. They know the culture. They are part of the culture. So learning all that, they're better prepared. They're better prepared to go in. We share the information. We educate them. We support them. We give them all the necessary resources they need to go into the community, and they are an integral part of this race to the vaccine.
Now, my final question to both of you, because you work you know, at the community level, whether it's for a religious or for an educational, in fact, both of them are intertwined. What would you say to someone who may have doubts? And I like what you said, Father Brian, about the willingness to engage and to ask questions and ask of the experts. What do you say to people who are having their doubts?
You know, I think one unfortunate tendency that many Christians have is to see faith and science as being opposed to one another. And I think that underlies so much of the I'm going to say the anti-vaxxer as opposed to vaccine hesitant. It underlies so much of the anti-vaxxer sentiments. But, you know, the Christian faith is very, very rich in terms of the interaction, the interplay, and the dialogue between faith and science. And what I would say to people, what I have said to people, what I'll continue to say to people, is that the power of God can work through medical science. The power of God can work through our doctors and our nurses and our healthcare workers. And so to somehow say that is antithetical to the faith is nonsensical. So let's be open to what God is trying to do through these good men and women who are tirelessly working to keep us healthy and to keep our loved ones alive.
Thank you, Father Brian. And for you, Michelle?
Presently, we have been engaging our communities in the vaccine campaign. Before you relax, get vaxxed. So that is the way we're going right now. We are going into the communities. We're doing mass distribution also, education on the proper use of the mask over the nose, under the chin, the other tools that goes along with the vaccine. And on that day, too, we promote the vaccine to the community. So it's a continuous work that we're doing, but we're on it.
Well, definitely it takes the entire community engagement, you know, whether it's spiritual or otherwise, for us to really answer all the questions that people have, and, you know, not to push people aside, but to embrace them and provide the answers that they need. Thank you both for joining me tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we're going to go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, we'll be completely open to whatever questions you may have. So don't forget that you can post your questions at the top of the next segment. I'll give you the information. But in the meantime, if you have a question, a burning question, please be ready to share it with us. We'll have the Attorney General and we'll have our panel of doctors coming back as well. Get the Facts, Dispel the Myths returns after these messages.
How does the AstraZeneca vaccine work?
The vaccine provides support to help your body develop immunity to the virus that causes COVID-19. The body is left with a supply of memory cells that will remember how to fight the virus. It takes a few weeks for the body to produce the antibodies after vaccination. How long does it take to build immunity after taking the first dose of the vaccine? There is protection 14 days after a person's first dose. However, that initial protection may decline over time, which is the reason why it is so important to get the second shot. How long after the first dose should one take the second dose? The second dose should be given between week 8 and week 12. Are there any deaths associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine? There have been no deaths associated with the AstraZeneca vaccine. Vaccines save lives. They remain the safest, most effective, and cost-effective medical tool developed. Increased uptake of the vaccine is the best way to stop this pandemic, save lives, and return to normalcy.
The vaccine is now available. We here at R&G Life encourage you to take the vaccine. Belize, it's time to roll up our sleeves.
I'm rolling up mine because I know what COVID can do to families.
Because I want to go back to the way things were.
I'm rolling up mine so that I'm able to do music again.
Because I want to protect my family.
Things are slowly getting back to normal. The new normal, which includes getting vaccinated. Trust the facts. When your turn comes, take the opportunity to get vaccinated. Roll up or believe.
We do our best in the media to get the information shared on vaccines with you, so you can make that decision. We aim to be accurate and timely, and will continue to do so for the development of our people and this country. I will take the vaccine when it's my turn. I urge you to take it too. Hashtag #GetVaccinated_Belize.
It is my time
to protect your life.
Don't wait to vaccinate.
I believe in the COVID-19 vaccine.
Do not hesitate, Belize. Vaccinate. Be COVID-19 safe.
The vaccine is the best way to protect lives.
Don't wait. Vaccinate.
If you care,
love them,
protect them,
vaccinate them.
Why should you wear your mask? To protect myself. My friends. My family and others. I wear my mask because I love my grandparents. With so many reasons to wear a mask, we continue to advise persons to wear a face mask properly, covering both nose and mouth. Together, we can keep Belize COVID-19 safe.
As Belize continues to shield its people from the worst ravages of this pandemic, we must continue to keep our country safe by ensuring reliable supply chains for critical components for the fight ahead. Belize's oxygen supply is safe with 300% more oxygen supply in country than is necessary. However, Fabregas continues to make our oxygen supply chain even more robust and responsive to a potential worst-case scenario. Through supply arrangements established and secured by Fabregas, our country can receive critical life-saving oxygen from 5 regional neighbors in Mexico and Central America through marine and/or land transportation. So, in addition, Fabregas has secured additional reliable sources of life-saving oxygen using a diversity of transportation modes and countries of origin. Fabregas Belize Limited. We got your back.
And welcome back. We're moving into our final segment, and in this segment we encourage you to send in your questions and to have them answered. Joining me, we have the return of Dr. Mark Musa, and we have Dr. Jorge Hidalgo, and we're also joined by the Attorney General Magali Marin Young. Good evening and welcome back to the show, and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, AG, let's start talking a little bit about the latest SI and the need, why the need for the latest SI and its protocols.
Hi. So these SIs are generated based on the recommendations from the COVID response team at the Ministry of Health. So they are driven by experts in public health and epidemiology in terms of what they believe measures need to be put in place to try to curb the spread of the COVID-19 virus.
Now, when we're talking about shifting the curfew time, why is that such an important consideration?
Well, because the medical experts believe that when people socialize later into the night, they're likely to imbibe in alcohol and become a lot more relaxed and expose others to the spread. You become a little bit less inhibited the more you drink and socialize, and they believe that, you know, if we put in place, move up the curfew hours, we'll have less socialization, not social activities, and less likely the spread of the virus.
Now, on August 1st, we're going to see further tightening of the protocols. What are some of those areas and that you'd like to discuss and clarify, if any?
So one of the most, the ones that is most discussed right now is that frontline workers are now required to either produce their vaccination card or undergo PCR testing every 2 weeks. And if they don't, then they would be subject to disciplinary action based on their particular employment regulations.
Now, a part of the discussion has been whether it's a human rights infringement. What's your response to that?
Look, under the Belize Constitution, there are several rights that are guaranteed to us, but these are not absolute rights. These rights all have limitation. There is only one fundamental right under the Constitution, which is an absolute right, and it's the right not to be subject to inhuman treatment. All the others have limitation. The freedom of expression has limitation. The freedom of movement has limitation. And the limitations of these fundamental rights are public safety, public health, national security, and generally the wider public interest. So, yes, we do have the right to freely move. Yes, we have the right to work. Yes, we enjoy the freedom of expression, but those have limitations.
Now, I just got a question, and for you, AG, so I'll continue there. Can someone please confirm what time is curfew? Is it 9 or is it 10?
It's 10. It's 10 to 4.
For the entire week now?
Yes.
So there you have your question answered. Now, I want to go to the doctors, and we're talking about the vaccine and human rights, because that has become a part of the conversation. And a lot of it is centered on the fact that people say, well, it has not had a long enough test run to make it, you know, something that is a guarantee that it will not affect me in a negative way, and that I should, you know, be respected in terms of my right to choose. But is that scientifically a truth?
Yeah, well, I've heard that's a legitimate question in terms of the speed with which the vaccine has been developed. But the technology, people have to understand the technology hasn't started from zero. For example, the mRNA technology has been investigated, studied for the past 50 years. It is now an important part of chemotherapy treatment, immunotherapy, where we are trying to more target different proteins and cells rather than the old chemotherapy agents, where they just blast and kill both the good and the bad cells. So the mRNA technology, which is the newest technology being developed in a vaccine, is not necessarily a new technology. It has been studied extensively, and it has been used in other medications and other uses. In fact, they're now investigating the mRNA technology for malaria. So it's not a totally new technology. In terms of the speed has to do with we're in a pandemic and a very dangerous situation. And you have to realize the United States, they went into emergency mode. They did their Defense Act, where they converted factories into focusing on developing a vaccine. So all focus was in developing a vaccine fast. If you're thinking about the trials, so phase 1 trials in terms of a vaccine usually starts in small groups where you're dealing with safety. So you want to make sure that there's no immediate reactions to the vaccine, there's no severe adverse effects on a vaccine. Phase 2 and because it's a pandemic, a lot of these phases have been started with overlap. They haven't waited and say, we're going to phase 1 and wait 3 months, let's start phase 2. Phase 2 is on a larger scale where they're dealing with efficacy. You're continuing to develop safety data. And then phase 3 is large scale. We have actually, there has been close to 4 billion doses of vaccines being given. So if it's a safety issue, let's look at the safety issue. 4 billion, we have not seen a significant, there are side effects with vaccines. The common side effects would be pain at the injection site, fever, chills, like a mild flu, body ache that may last for 24, 48 hours. If we look at the AstraZeneca vaccine in terms of safety, the biggest concern has been blood clots. It's been studied, millions of doses of AstraZeneca and the Johnson & Johnson, which are considered viral vector vaccines, where they've added the genetic material of the virus to a different virus, the adenovirus, a much less virulent virus than the coronavirus. And that virus transmits the genetic material so that our cells can make the spike protein to stimulate our immunity in a controlled way. If we look at the safety of the AstraZeneca vaccine, the studies, out of the millions of doses, the risk of a blood clot is 1 in 100,000 doses being given. The risk of a woman taking birth control is 1 in 10,000. The risk of me getting on a flight from Belize, from Miami to England, longer than 4 hours, of developing a deep vein thrombosis is 1 in 5,000. So there are risks, but the risks are rare.
If I say
Right.
I can say
Sure.
something, no? But since one of the main purpose tonight also as well is to bring people facts, in that with a simple with your phone, we use the base evidence medicine. We don't just invent things. Whatever we do is with evidence. I mean, our cell phones, it can help us to have that we call it the infodemia. Then you can choose what information you will decide that is a veridic information and is real. You know, we use the Cochrane library, which is a base evidence and is around the world one of the most important libraries. And then you can just open Cochrane library, and it's more than 5,000 trials on COVID-19 in general. And there are 539 trials on COVID-19 vaccines. And then it's simple. You can choose what you want to read. You want to read COVID-19 vaccines, ethics, what some of the information that Dr. Musa just mentioned. I mean that it's an evidence, and you can use. Also, if you say, Dr. Musa, you say, no, but we can just also go in our phones and say, okay, I want to know what is happening with the vaccines. Then you go to coronavirus vaccine tracker, and then you will find easily in your phone our world in data, coronavirus vaccine, and you will find out easily that 3.89 billion doses of the vaccine were already administered. I mean that our phone, the information that is available, we need to use responsibly. And all the data and the facts are there. I just want to add that.
You mentioned about personal choice, and I think as a doctor, I always want to, is that personal choice. Some people I hear say, well, I want control over what I put into my body. That is very true for a personal condition. If I have diabetes, I want, and as a doctor, I always believe in informed consent. It's a joint decision. I believe my job is to give you information for you to make the best decision. But really, a person that says, a young person might feel, and the probability is that they might say, well, I think my immune system is strong enough to fight the coronavirus. But you are not part of the solution. You're just thinking about yourself. This is a very infectious virus. You're not looking at yourself as a transmitter of the virus. So you have to also look at we have to achieve a certain level of protection in order for the transmission to go down. If everybody takes that approach, we will be wearing the mask for another few years. We'll be in the same problem. The pandemic has had a devastating effect on our economy, on our children's education. We don't need to, many jobs have been lost. So an individual, although personally, I believe in trying to educate people and not necessarily forcing something. You would hope that with education, you can convince the majority of persons to get the vaccine. But the government has a job as well, to do what is in the best interest of many and not just the individual. So in this case, when you're in a pandemic, the greater good of the society is the most important. And so frontline workers, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, well, I think I can. In fact, in young people in the States, they are mainly the unvaccinated. And you see the hospitalizations getting younger and younger. And you see many testimonials where people are saying, please give me the vaccine. it's too late then. You cannot vaccinate yourself out of a surge. It's too late then.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity now to prevent waves after waves if we do things slowly and cautiously, and everybody is a part of the solution rather than thinking about me. We need to think about all of us.
Thank you very much. What I'll do is I'll just run down the questions and we'll just try and get through as many of them as possible. So if you can just respond very briefly. The first question is, for how long will the vaccine, I'm reading them as is, right? How long will the vaccine protect us before we need another booster shot?
Well, we don't know as yet, no? Right now, we know that the vaccine is giving us protection. We measure our antibodies, and we are still learning. We don't know, this is something that is being discussed, if a booster will need it. We don't have that answer as yet.
Okay.
I can say if you look at certain countries, for example, Israel, they started their campaign quite early, and they achieved quite a high percentage. They are seeing that there are certain, even in the vaccinated group, people over 65 and maybe with immune compromised systems, that they may need a booster earlier. So they are planning to, in that group, the same with England, I think they are planning to give the over 65 and special high risk groups, the immunocompromised, a booster at 6 months.
Okay. Now, the next question is, so the science says take the second dose at 12 weeks. Why is the ministry giving it at 8 weeks?
Well, initially, we have had an issue, well, the whole world is an issue with access to vaccines. So Belize has had 100,000, we have been lucky. We've had 100,000 doses given by Mexico. We've had 25,000 given by friends in India. We've had 100 and 1,000 from Barbados. 66,000 have been through the COVAX facility. So that's roughly 192,000 of the AstraZeneca vaccine and 10,000 of the Sinopharm from United Arab Emirates. When we initially, I think as a group of the COVID response team, and when we had small numbers, considering when you get 25,000, you have to do it in a phased approach. And so we started with the higher risk groups, but we felt that at the time when we were dealing with that variant and the particular facts, it was far better to get more people first doses in and then try and get access to more doses. So initially the AstraZeneca, when it was started in England, they were giving it at 4 weeks. When they studied the antibody profile, you probably get the maximum effect at 12 weeks. But you have to judge the risk of getting infected in between getting doses. With the Delta variant, that risk has changed. With the first dose, it only protects you from hospitalization 72%. With the second dose, that goes up dramatically to 92%. However, it does not protect you from symptomatic infection, mild infection. The first dose is only 30%. The second dose is 60%. And we've seen also a drop in the Pfizer vaccine in terms of preventing mild symptomatic infection. So it is, in terms of the timing, changing from, it's a range. It was from 8 to 12 weeks. But we now think Belize actually has a big gap between persons having one dose and persons fully vaccinated. We have 122,000 people having at least one dose. 46,000 persons have been fully vaccinated. So we have 75,000 people waiting for their second doses. We need to get that. So by changing it from 12 to 8 weeks, we're trying to close that gap, to get more people fully vaccinated and increase the protection that the vaccine offers.
Now, the next question is, this person says, the first thing I really need to know is what studies do you have about lactating mothers and the vaccination?
Yeah, the vaccine is likely one of the things that in mothers they say if it affects the fertility, and the other things if it can be used during pregnancy and during breastfeeding. Then the answer is, based on the information we have, it's safe. We recommend that the pregnant and the who is breastfeeding to discuss with the family physician to make that decision.
The next question, what if Belize does not reach the 70% of the population vaccinated? What will that mean for the state of emergency? No, will it be lifted?
We are not under a state of emergency. The state of emergency expired quite some time ago, and the government did not find it necessary to extend the state of emergency. So we don't have a state of emergency. When we first had the outbreak, the government of the day felt that we needed to declare a state of emergency. At that time, we didn't know anything much about the virus. Scientists were just learning about the virus. So in March last year, they declared a state of emergency. But we no longer, we know enough. We know preventative measures. We know about the vaccine. So I don't think we're at the same stage we were back in March of 2020 to declare a state of emergency.
Thank you. What percentage are we on the vaccine? I think you gave the numbers.
I think first dose is, if we base it on our population being 420,000 persons, if we have 122 persons getting at least one dose, that's roughly 29%. In terms of fully vaccinated, it's about 11%. Now, Belize has a very young population, so we cannot use the 70% threshold as our aim. There's only 242,000 Belizeans that are over 18 years old. That's 58%. So we need as many as the 58% to get vaccinated. So between 12 and 18, AstraZeneca currently is only authorized to be given to 18 years and older. The Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines are licensed for 12 to 18. In Belize, we have about 68,000 persons between 12 and 18. That would take us, if we get access to those vaccines and were to start giving 12 to 18-year-olds, that would still only put us at 72% of persons eligible for the vaccine. So, but we have to push as many of that 58% to be vaccinated.
Okay, let me try and get in as many questions. We're down to our last 5 minutes. What would be the recommendation to those who suffer with severe allergies? Should they take the vaccine?
Yes, I think, well, it depends what type of allergies you have. If somebody has had a severe anaphylactic reaction where they have had
what?
Anaphylactic means the severest form of an allergic reaction is when it immediately causes a reaction where it drops your blood pressure, you become unwell, you develop a rash, you start having difficulty breathing, you might start wheezing. That is very rare with these vaccines. Having seasonal allergies, you can optimize your treatment for that, and that's not a contraindication for
And
vaccination.
the second part of their question was, should they take certain tests before receiving the vaccine?
What we usually say is that if someone have the contraindication for the vaccine is if a person have a reaction to one of the components of the vaccine. If it is not the case, they can take the vaccine. We usually keep the people that get vaccinated, we keep in observation for around 15 minutes to half an hour, normally, just in case, because we never know who is going to have an allergic reaction.
The next question, how long these vaccines are going to last in us to prevent this virus infection, and how frequent will it be for us to take this vaccine to prevent death?
I think we answered that question already at the beginning, saying that Mark put some of the people that probably will need a booster, and we don't know as yet. We are still learning about the vaccines in terms of the durability and
One person asked, can a person that suffers from blood clots, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart condition, and thyroid be vaccinated?
That's in one person?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, to put it, persons with comorbidities benefit the most from the vaccine in terms of if I'm a diabetic, if I'm over 60 years old, if I have hypertension. So those persons benefit the most because having those conditions, you have a higher chance of developing complications of the actual infection. So the vaccine is even more important in that group. Now, specifically having blood clots, I would say that if you're on treatment for blood clots, definitely that's a contraindication. You would want to use an alternative vaccine. You would want, if we had options, the Pfizer or the Moderna mRNA. Those aren't, there haven't been any significant cases of blood clots. But even in persons who've had a history of blood clots, the AstraZeneca isn't necessarily a contraindication for that person. It's a risk-benefit analysis that individual would have to do, along with their doctor.
Next question. What does it mean when you have a lower viral load with the vaccine?
Well, we don't use that. What we do is for someone who gets vaccinated, if we have the ability to measure antibodies, then we measure we can measure the antibodies before the vaccine, before the first dosage, and then we can then see what is the trend on protection. I mean that's essentially that I'm referring to.
Well, I think the concept with that might be that the Delta variant needs less of a viral load to infect. It's stickier, it's more infectious, and also a vaccinated person doesn't develop, your immunity, if you're fully vaccinated, lowers the viral load, so you become less infectious. You shed less virus.
And our last question for tonight will be, what's the shelf life of those vaccines?
Well, when you get a shipment, they will tell you what the shelf life is. You would hope that some countries, when they donate, that we would gladly accept. But sometimes there might be a short 3 month. But I think it's at least 3 months, 6 months shelf life. But you will be told what is the shelf life of that particular batch of vaccines that the country gets.
And are there any long-term side effects for the vaccines?
Well, the side effects, and also as we also already mentioned, there are some immediate side effects, and most of the time we see fatigue and tiredness that lasts probably for a week or two. Again, we are still learning. We are not seeing long-term side effects so far.
Okay. Now, any final words before we wrap our show? From the AG first.
Well, I just want to echo what your various guests have said, that we need to listen to science. We need to filter the information that we read. Try to read information about the virus and the vaccine from credible sources, as opposed to conspiracy theorists, and educate ourselves what science rules in this case.
And
I would just want to say that I think as a country we have done well for the last 6 months or so. We have a unique opportunity to prevent a major wave if we act on the science and the data and try and stop transmission by continuing to practice the physical distances, the mask wearing. It's too early to start rewarding. We have too little people protected. It cannot be a fight between me, the vaccinated, saying, well, I have done my part, I've gotten the vaccine, that's the end of the job. We still have to be patient. It takes 8 weeks to get 2 doses, 10 weeks to achieve full vaccination. There are a lot of people who, I think in terms of the uptake of the vaccine, I don't think has been a problem. If you look at it, 122 persons, 22,000 people getting the vaccine out of a target of 240,000, that's 50% already. So we have to think about the positive. We have to allow that next 75,000 people to get their second dose as well. It's too early to start saying, well, we are ready to just open up, because the risk is we start all the way back. Because to get control, once you're in the middle of a wave, the only way to get control is to go all the way back and put in more restrictions than that. But if we follow the numbers, if each one of us do our part in terms of getting our questions answered, look at the science, and then accessing the vaccine, but continuing to do the preventative measures in terms of spreading the virus, I think we will do fine.
COVID-19 is a social responsibility. We are in this together. Get vaccinated.
Thank you very much for joining me tonight. And of course, if you have any questions, we'd like to also encourage you to go to the Ministry of Health Facebook page for the latest information on vaccination sites. Remember, it's all of our responsibility at the end of the day. Thank you very much for joining us for Get the Facts, Dispel the Myths, a live discussion on the COVID-19 pandemic. This has been a collaboration between the Ministry of Health and Wellness and Channel 5. I'm your host, William Neal. Thank you. Good night. Remember the 3 W's. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Good night.